My name is Max. I live in Portland, Oregon, working as a software engineer for the past 5 years. 3 years ago, I married a woman who I thought was playful and fun. Her name was Jessica, and she loved pranks. I used to think her jokes were harmless, even charming in their own way. But something shifted over time, and I started to notice a pattern I had been ignoring. One Friday night, after a 12-hour shift debugging code that refused to cooperate, I pulled into my driveway, exhausted. Before I could even open my car door, I saw the flashing red and blue lights reflecting off my windshield. 2 police officers were walking toward me, their hands resting on their holsters. I was completely confused, my mind racing through possibilities. Then I looked up at our living room window, and I saw her standing there behind the curtain, smiling. Before I continue with what happened next, I want to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below. If this story already has you curious, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you will want to hear how this whole thing played out. The officers approached my car with serious expressions. One of them, a tall man with graying hair, motioned for me to step out. I complied immediately, raising my hands slightly to show I was not a threat. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I tried to explain that this was my house, that I lived here, but the officer cut me off. He told me they had received a call about domestic disturbance. A woman inside the house reported screaming, things being thrown, and said she was terrified of her husband. I stood there frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. I had just arrived home. I had not even stepped inside yet. My work badge was still clipped to my shirt. The officer asked me to turn around and place my hands behind my back. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around my wrists, and I felt a wave of humiliation wash over me. Neighbors were beginning to peek through their windows and crack open their front doors. I could see Mrs. Patterson from next door standing on her porch with her hand over her mouth. I tried to look back at my house, desperate to understand what was happening. Jessica was still at the window, no longer hiding. She was holding up her phone, clearly recording, and that smile on her face had grown wider. She was enjoying this. The officers led me to their patrol car and placed me in the back seat. The vinyl seats stuck to my skin, and the space felt suffocating. I sat there with my hands cuffed behind me, staring at the metal grate separating me from the front seats, trying to make sense of the situation. At the police station, I was taken into a small interrogation room. The walls were gray, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and there was a single metal table with 2 chairs. Officer Davis, the one who had cuffed me, sat across from me and asked about my relationship with my wife. I explained everything as clearly as I could. We had been married for 3 years. There was no history of violence between us. We had not even argued recently. I told him about my day, how I had been at work since 6 in the morning and only just got home at 6 in the evening. I offered to provide security footage from my office building to prove I had been there all day. Officer Davis studied my face, and I could see he was trying to decide whether to believe me. He excused himself and stepped outside to make a phone call. I sat there alone for what felt like an eternity, the handcuffs still tight around my wrists. When he returned, he told me they had called Jessica to verify my story. She had answered in a shaky voice, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. She said she had panicked and made a mistake. She told them she did not want to press any charges. Officer Davis looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and concern. He removed the handcuffs and told me I was free to go, but he also said something that stuck with me. He advised me to seriously think about the kind of relationship I was in. He said this kind of call could have ended very differently, and next time I might not be so lucky. I drove home in silence, my hands still trembling on the steering wheel. When I walked through the front door, Jessica was sitting on the couch watching television like it was just another evening. I stood there staring at her, waiting for some kind of explanation or apology. She glanced over at me casually and asked what took me so long. I could not believe what I was hearing. I asked her what the hell had just happened. She turned back to the TV and laughed, telling me to relax because it was just a prank. She said I should have seen the look on my face when the cops showed up. I felt my blood pressure rising. I told her this was not a prank. I had been handcuffed on our front lawn in front of all our neighbors. She waved her hand dismissively and said I was being dramatic. Nothing bad happened, she said. They let me go. I asked her if she had recorded it already, knowing the answer. She nodded and said she was going to post it on TikTok because it was hilarious. I felt like I had been slapped across the face. I tried to explain to her how serious this was, how it could have destroyed my life, my career, my reputation. She rolled her eyes and told me to stop being so sensitive. She said it was over and I needed to get over it. I stood there realizing she felt absolutely no remorse. As I tried to process what had just happened, my mind started replaying other incidents from our marriage. This was not the first time Jessica had done something like this. There was the time she posted on social media that I was cheating on her, complete with fake screenshots. I had to spend days explaining to my family and friends that it was not true. Then there was the time she called my boss and told him I was violently ill and could not come to work even though I was already halfway to the office. I nearly got written up for that. Another time she dumped a bucket of ice water on me while I was sleeping, and when I jerked awake in shock, I hit my head on the nightstand hard enough to leave a bruise. Every single time she said the same thing. It was just a joke. Why was I so serious? I had convinced myself that I was overreacting, that I needed to be more easygoing. But tonight, she had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, while Jessica slept soundly beside me. I could not sleep. My mind kept circling back to everything that had happened, not just that evening, but over the past 3 years. I thought about the 2 years we dated before getting married, how her sense of humor had initially drawn me to her. She was spontaneous and fun, always keeping things interesting. But somewhere along the way, the jokes stopped being funny. They became cruel. They became weapons. I remembered what my mother had told me before the wedding. She had pulled me aside and said that Jessica had a mean streak, that I should be careful. I had defended Jessica, insisting my mother just did not understand her personality. Now lying there in the dark, I wondered how I had been so blind. When morning came, I woke up before Jessica and checked my phone. There was a text message from my best friend Tyler. It simply said, "Dude, is this you?" followed by a link. My stomach dropped as I clicked it. The video loaded and there I was on the screen. 35 seconds of footage showing me being handcuffed, the officers guiding me into the patrol car, and the whole thing filmed from our living room window. The caption read, "Pranking my husband by calling the cops," followed by laughing emojis and a comment about my facial expression. I felt sick. The video already had over 50,000 views. The comments section was a mix of people laughing, people criticizing Jessica, and worst of all, people tagging my friends and co-workers. I scrolled through and saw names I recognized. People I worked with were seeing this. I checked her other social media accounts and found she had posted it on Instagram and Facebook as well. My private humiliation was now public entertainment. I walked into the bedroom where Jessica was still asleep and woke her up. She blinked at me groggily, annoyed at being disturbed. I told her she had posted the video. She sat up, grabbed her phone, and smiled as she scrolled through the notifications. She said it was blowing up, and that she was almost at 10,000 followers now. I told her to take it down immediately. She looked at me like I was being unreasonable and asked why she would do that. She said it was getting her followers and attention. I raised my voice, something I rarely did, and told her this was about my reputation, my job, my entire life. She sat up straighter, her expression hardening. She said I was boring and that I never wanted to have fun. She accused me of making everything about myself. Then she said the video was her content, and she was keeping it up. I stood there feeling like I did not even know this person anymore. She went further, saying that if I could not handle a simple joke, maybe I was not cut out for this marriage. Those words hit me like a physical blow. I left the room and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. I needed to know what my options were. I searched for information about filing false police reports in Oregon. The results confirmed what I suspected. Filing a false police report is a misdemeanor. It carries penalties including fines and possible jail time. It wastes police resources and can have serious consequences for the person falsely accused. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Harrison, a family lawyer who had helped my parents years ago. I explained the entire situation to him. He listened carefully and then told me this was more serious than I might realize. Jessica had wasted police resources and put me at risk. I had grounds to press charges. More importantly, he said I needed to protect myself, because if she was willing to do this once, there was no telling what she might do next. I asked him about divorce. He said he could draft the papers immediately. Given her behavior, we could cite emotional abuse and defamation. He told me to save every piece of evidence I had, screenshots, videos, messages, everything. I felt a sense of clarity forming. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Later that afternoon, I went outside to check the mail and ran into Mrs. Patterson. She looked at me with obvious concern and asked if everything was all right. She said she and her husband had seen the police the night before and had been worried. I tried to explain that it was a misunderstanding, that my wife had thought it would be funny to call them. Mrs. Patterson frowned deeply and said that was not funny at all. She told me they had been genuinely scared something terrible was happening. I thanked her for her concern and went back inside feeling even more embarrassed. That evening, I received a text from Sarah, a co-worker from my team. She had seen the video making the rounds and wanted to know if I was okay. She offered help if I needed anything. I appreciated her kindness, but I also felt humiliated that my personal life was now workplace gossip. I realized that if I did not take action, Jessica would continue to hurt me and potentially hurt others in the future. That night, I sat in my home office while Jessica watched television in the living room. I took out a piece of paper and wrote down every single thing she had done over the years. The pattern was undeniable. This was not about pranks or having fun. This was about control, about making me feel small, about disrespecting me in ways that she could later dismiss as jokes. I recognized it now for what it was: gaslighting, emotional manipulation. I opened an email from Mr. Harrison. The draft divorce papers were ready. I read through the document carefully. The grounds listed were emotional abuse, defamation of character, and irreconcilable differences. I also received an email from the police department. They said they would review my case if I filed a formal complaint about the false report. I sat there with my hand hovering over the mouse. My hand was shaking, but my mind was clear. I clicked yes. I wanted to proceed with both the charges and the divorce. Sunday morning arrived, and I was already awake when Jessica got up. I had prepared everything the night before. 2 envelopes sat on the kitchen table. The first contained the divorce petition. The second contained documentation that I had pressed charges with the police department. Jessica came downstairs around 9 in the morning and walked into the kitchen. She said good morning like it was any other day. I was standing by the table and I told her we needed to talk. She looked down at the envelopes and asked what they were. I pushed the first envelope toward her and told her it was a petition for divorce. I had already signed it. She had 30 days to respond. Her face went pale. She asked if I was serious. I pushed the second envelope toward her and explained that it was documentation showing I had pressed charges against her for filing a false police report. I told her the police would contact her within 72 hours. Jessica picked up both envelopes with shaking hands. She looked at the papers and then back at me, her eyes wide. She said I could not be serious, that it was just a joke. I looked at her without any emotion and said it stopped being a joke the moment she decided my life, my reputation, and my freedom were worth less than views on social media. She dropped the papers on the table and insisted I was overreacting. She said people do pranks all the time. I told her not like this. I explained that she could have gotten me arrested for real. She had humiliated me in front of our neighbors. She had posted it for the entire world to see. And when I asked her to take it down, she had refused. Jessica started crying, saying she was sorry and that she would take the video down right away. She begged me not to go through with this. I shook my head and told her it was too late. I had already spoken with a lawyer and filed the police report. This was not the first time she had done something like this. It was just the time she finally went too far. Her tears quickly turned to anger. She stood up and said I would regret this. She threatened to tell everyone I was abusive and that she would ruin me. I calmly held up my phone and told her I had been recording our conversation. I also informed her that I had saved every single video message and post she had made. If she tried to defame me again, I would use all of it against her. She stared at me in disbelief, her face red with fury. She said she could not believe I was doing this after everything she had done for me. I did not respond. I simply told her she had until the end of the week to move out. I was staying with Tyler that night, and when I came back on Monday, I expected her to be gone or at least packing. She shouted that this was her house too. I corrected her, explaining that the house was in my name alone. I had bought it before we got married. She could check the deed if she wanted to. Jessica broke down crying again, but this time I felt nothing. She ran into the bedroom and started throwing clothes into a suitcase. Within an hour, she was dragging her luggage out the front door, still crying and cursing at me. I stood at the window and watched her drive away. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. The following week, I returned to work on Monday. My co-workers asked how I was doing, and I gave them a simple explanation. We were getting divorced, and it was for the best. They were sympathetic and did not push for details. On Tuesday, the police department contacted Jessica. Officer Davis called me to let me know they had reviewed the case and were moving forward with charges. Jessica would be summoned to court. I felt a sense of justice beginning to take shape. On Wednesday, Mr. Harrison called to tell me that Jessica had hired a lawyer. They wanted to negotiate. She was willing to settle the divorce quickly if I agreed to drop the criminal charges. I asked him what the consequences would be if I refused. He explained that she could face a fine and possibly probation. It would remain on her record permanently. I told him I was not dropping the charges. She needed to learn that actions have consequences. On Thursday, Jessica called me multiple times. I did not answer any of her calls. She left a voicemail, her voice breaking as she begged me to reconsider. She said she had made a mistake and was sorry. She promised she would do anything if I would just drop the charges. I listened to the message once and then deleted it. I had made my decision, and I was not going back on it. 2 weeks later, Jessica appeared in court for the false police report charge. I did not attend, but Mr. Harrison sent me a summary of what happened. Jessica was fined $1,500 and given 1 year of probation. If she violated any laws during that year, she would face jail time. This conviction would follow her for the rest of her life. The divorce proceedings moved quickly since we did not have many shared assets. Jessica agreed to sign the papers to avoid dragging things out any longer. We divided what little we had. I kept the house and she took her car and some furniture. Within 3 months, everything was finalized. I received the official divorce decree via email one afternoon while sitting in my home office. I held my coffee mug and stared at the document on my screen. It felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. After Jessica was charged, she deleted all the videos from her social media accounts. But the internet never forgets. Dozens of people had already saved and reposted the footage. The comments under those reposts had shifted dramatically. People were no longer laughing. Instead, they were criticizing her. Comments said this was not a prank, but abuse. They said she deserved everything that happened to her. Some people praised me for standing up for myself. A popular YouTuber even made a video analyzing the entire situation, and it got hundreds of thousands of views. The video sparked conversations about where the line is between pranks and harm. I started receiving messages from strangers thanking me for speaking up. Some of them shared their own stories of partners who had done similar things. They said my story gave them the courage to leave their own toxic relationships. I realized that what had happened to me was bigger than just my personal experience. It had become a moment that resonated with people who had felt trapped or humiliated by someone they loved. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my life looked completely different. I had renovated the house, painting the walls in new colors and replacing furniture that reminded me of Jessica. I wanted the space to feel like mine, not ours. I joined a rock climbing gym and met a whole new group of friends who knew nothing about my past. I started cooking meals for myself, something I had not done in years. I went for runs every morning and spent my evenings reading books I had been meaning to get to. Tyler and my other close friends visited often. One night we sat around a fire pit in my backyard, talking and laughing. Tyler looked at me and said I seemed genuinely happy, maybe happier than I had been in years. I smiled and told him I was. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. I was not dating anyone new. I was not ready for that yet, and I was not in a hurry. I was learning how to be comfortable in my own company, how to enjoy my own life without needing someone else to validate it. Looking back, I realized I had been in a toxic relationship without fully understanding it. The signs had been there all along. The gaslighting, the lack of respect, the absence of empathy. I had ignored them because I loved her and kept hoping she would change. But people who do not want to change will never change, no matter how much you love them. I learned that love should never mean enduring mistreatment. Real love is built on mutual respect and kindness. When boundaries are crossed repeatedly, you have every right to walk away. It does not make you weak. It makes you strong. People have asked me if I regret pressing charges against Jessica. My answer is always the same. Not for a single second. Actions have consequences, and she needed to learn that lesson. I did not do it out of hatred or revenge. I did it because it was the right thing to do, both for myself and potentially for others she might have hurt in the future. If I had let it go, she would have continued treating people the same way, believing there were no real consequences for her behavior. At least now she knows there are limits to what she can get away with. I also learned that standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. For too long, I had let things slide because I did not want to cause conflict, or because I thought I was being too sensitive. But there is a difference between being easygoing and being a doormat. If someone in your life treats your existence like a joke, do not laugh along with them. Walk away. You deserve better than that. It took me 3 years of marriage and one night in handcuffs on my own lawn to realize that truth. I hope it does not take you that long. Some bridges are meant to be burned, and some chapters are meant to end so that new ones can begin. I am living proof that life gets better when you have the courage to leave what is hurting you. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where someone crossed a line and tried to pass it off as a joke? How did you handle it? Drop your answer in the comments below because I would love to hear your stories. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss future stories. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we deserve respect and that it is okay to demand it. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps someone out there find the strength to make the right choice for themselves. Take care of yourselves, and remember that you are worth more than anyone else's entertainment.